I'd like to call this board meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So public comment will occur during the public comment portion of the meeting and is done via raising your hand remotely or in person. During public comment, once acknowledged, please state your name and ward so that it can be included in the minutes. And please limit your time to 3 minutes. Public comment is governed by policy BEDH. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, under new business, the topic, House Bill 437.
That'll be, we'll do that after the policies, H, I guess. All right, we're going to open up the meeting for public comment. Is there any comment in the room? I do not see any. Is there any online? No. No comment online. All right, so we will close public comment for now, and we'll return to it at the end of the meeting. We're going to move on to our student reports.
Hello, I'm Nora Burns. So for student council today, the grants closed for clubs, and student council is giving away $2,800. Okay, that's it. That's right. Between 6 LHS clubs, so we're psyched about that. All the clubs are happy. Right now for athletics and academics committee, for student council, they're working hard to get those handbook tardy policy revisions done. I talked to Mr. Smith and Mr. Stone about an after-school position for those who have students. I experienced this myself. I live in Grantham, and I didn't have a way home last year because I didn't have my license, and my practices were later on, and I was just stuck at the school. But the library closes right when school closes at 2:30, so I had nowhere to go, and other kids in my position experienced this as well. And so I talked to both of them of getting back this position of having someone stay and monitor just a room where kids can go. I also think it's safer with kids. They don't have to be going on the road, and they can wait for their practices. So we're going to try to see if we can get that in place for the winter, hopefully, once sports start. And then I just want to make a short comment about the SRO. I've talked to some other kids, and we've all had similar feedback that we don't really see him, which makes sense because he's only here one Wednesday every week, so he's in and out. And then for more of like the school side of things, Meet of the Champs for girls cross country was last week, and then the finals for boys soccer was also last week. And then one last thing, wet paint players performance on Eurydice starts tomorrow at 7, and then it's on Saturday and Sunday too if you guys would like to support and go. That's it.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Nora? It's helpful. Ian wants to add something.
Yeah, so we did this a couple of years ago, and so we have event management money that we pay people to take ticket money to basketball games or football games, and so we have an account that Mike Stone used a few years ago to pay folks to be available to kids such that we can accommodate them during this kind of dark, cold time. Initially, we had 5 or 6, 7 kids show up, and then that dwindled away to nobody. And so I think we're going to give it another try. and publicize it a bit more, maybe have it in a space, like Nora says, perhaps a library instead of a classroom where people feel more comfortable. But the trick, I think, is trying to find someone to do it. And so we have a loyal group of ed assistants and substitutes who did it last time and kind of rotated through. So we're going to try it again. It's a great idea.
What is the amount of, because I know in the, like, fall and spring, practices will start around 3:30, so there's not
Right.
much of a difference, but in the winter, what can that gap of
So-
time be?
I think you had practice at 5 tonight, so. And we do have practices at the SAU later in the evening, and I think we used to run 4 practices, and all the way up to 9 o'clock. We try not to have that late practice at the high school anymore. You know, in years past, kids would go home and their parents would bring them back for practice, you know, at the later time. But that 5 o'clock from 2:30 to 5 is a gap. And I know people have talked about that when we have the new student center. The idea is to try to keep that open. So we'll have to, instead of budgeting for it, which is kind of tough to do, the hardest piece is simply finding someone to do it. And so we've had success in the past. We expect to be able to do it again.
Great. I think it's a really good idea, actually. Any other comments for Nora or Ian? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, correspondence. Mary.
We have one letter that was sent as a thank you note.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, which moves on to the consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve the public and non-public minutes from October 25th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the public minutes from October 25th, 2023.
Can I get okay, motion by MJ, second by Steven. Does anybody have any corrections or additions or deletions from the minutes? Kamala already told me that if you notice the bottom running footer is the wrong date. She knows that. She's fixing that. Are there any other corrections anyone wants to make? No? Okay. All right. The motion is to approve the public and non-public minutes from October 25th. All those in favor?
I think just the public.
Oh, just the public? Yeah. Sorry, just the public. I was reading ahead. The public. All those in favor of approving the public minutes from October 25th? Okay. So that is, and Lisa's online, by the way.
So if she's participating, we have to do roll call.
We have to do roll call. I just realized because I just saw her log in.
And she needs to say where she is. And
Okay. All right, Lisa, are you there?
It's me, Margaret.
She's
Yeah.
nodding yes.
Okay, so you need to unmute and then tell us.
She can't.
She can't. She doesn't have sound.
You're unmuted. She can't. Can you hear us? She can hear us.
But you can't speak. Hold on, please. Yeah, I think for her to be counted.
You can hear her?
Is your speaker on, Amy?
Do you have an idea? Yeah, her volume's up. I mean, if he can hear her, then her volume's up. Pause, please, while we try and resolve this problem.
All right, Lisa? I can hear you.
Hold on. As long as that's enforcement, that's what she's unmuted, that's okay.
Yeah, you guys will hear yourself, but as long as you hit mute when you talk, then you won't hear yourself.
Okay. When I talk.
Yeah, and then when you talk,
Because we need to hear her, but if she mutes herself, then we won't hear her.
yeah,
Right? Okay.
she can unmute herself.
Okay, Lisa, we can hear you now. Can you say where you are and if you're alone? Oh,
Lisa?
I am in Oroville, Washington, and I am alone.
Okay. We're going to do a roll call vote for approving the public minutes. Kevin?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Me, I'm a yes. Tia?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lisa? Okay. All right, now we need a motion to approve the non-public minutes from October 25th.
I will make a motion to approve the non-public meeting minutes from October 25th, 2023.
Okay, moved by MJ, seconded by Steve. Are there any corrections for those minutes? Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call vote again. Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tia?
Yes.
Wendy?
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't part of a lot, I mean, I was there, but I wasn't sort of part of the stuff that
That
happened.
happened during the meeting, okay? One abstention. All right, Jessica?
Yes.
Lisa? Okay. All right, that is eight yeses and one abstention. Okay, then we're going to move on to the nominations, renominations, and acknowledge resignations and retirements. Can I get a motion on those?
Make a motion to approve the nominations, resignations, and retirement list dated November 22nd, 2023.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by MJ, seconded by Mary. Do we have any comments or questions? Yes,
Question.
Wendy.
So, I was looking back at old nominations, resignations, retirements. That actually should say retirements on the title, because that's what a lot of our things are. But Susie Hayes was also on the August 2023. So do we want to take her off this one because we've already voted on that?
Okay.
Yes, there was an error within the secretary office that she had not been sending out letters to them, which triggered to payroll from there, so that was how that got missed on there. So we can remove that since we've already accepted her resignation.
And Bonnie Bergeron was on that August one as
Okay.
well, but she's not on this list.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, MJ.
So I just have a question on what's kind of the process on some of the retirements that are, like Karen Woosley and Dorothy Powell? Those might be hard to recruit, so do we start posting the positions now since how we know that they're in, or what is the recruiting lead time on that?
Sure. Karen Woosley position is already posted. And then is Dorothy the psychologist?
Yeah.
Yes. Karen is working on recruitment because we do have a school psychologist position open for the middle school for this year as well. So we talked about that, is trying to get out to recruit early.
Any other comments about resignations? So I just have, and it's not really a comment, it's not really a question, just more of a comment. Given that this is quite a lot of retirements that we're going to have this year in a bunch of different grade levels, what kind of, are you all looking at the retirements and the grade levels and the enrollments and sort of thinking about that now that we're coming into budget time?
First, and then I can jump on.
I mean, I guess the short answer is yes. The budget that, we'll talk about this, but the budget that's before you tonight assumes replacement for these people. But, yes. You know.
Yes, we will continue to work with our building principals and have discussions with this board in terms of ideal class sizes and kind of future planning and what the vision is for the district going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion to accept these nominations, resignations, and retirements. Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tia?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lisa? Can you say it again? Yeah, can you say it again? Yes. Okay, Lisa's a yes. Thank you. All right. All right, that brings us to the SAU leadership team update and the superintendent's update.
So tonight, I'd like to thank my team for their hard work in preparing for our budget presentation. They have worked tirelessly to collect data, assess the impact, and discuss the needs of all of our schools. One of the areas of focus is to ensure that our 2 elementary schools are aligned and that we're making great progress in collaborative efforts with our principals and our curricular team. Both of our principals participated in the budget planning meeting together, which was a great start for us in that alignment. This alignment is vital to ensure that all students are going to receive an equitable and shared learning experience regardless of which elementary school that they attend. Recently, I met with the Lebanon Police Department to review the Memorandum of Understanding. While the Police Department intends to maintain uniformity in the supervision of the SRO, his uniform and his firearm, we have identified some areas for calibration, such as office space and certain language that we can work on. I am looking for guidance with the board, and we can have a discussion after I finish this report. I recently spent some time at Lebanon High School during their lunch in the library. This was an opportunity for students to share their thoughts and insights regarding the experiences with the SRO at Lebanon High School. Unfortunately, no students took advantage of this opportunity, but we remain committed to gathering their perspective. And as Nora said too, I think just because there's not a lot of impact with him being there one day a week, that students just did not take that opportunity to come in to see myself or Mr. Smith. In a few weeks, I will send out a communication survey to our students, staff, families, alumni, and community members to assess our current communication effectiveness and gather feedback on how to improve our communication channels. This survey data will be used to guide our district's communication plan. In other news, we are still looking to find a candidate for our systems and engineer position. After our previous candidate declined our offer. We understand this role is important, and we are actively recruiting to fill it as soon as possible. Finally, I am sad to inform you that our Director of Facilities, Steve, has resigned. His last day with the Lebanon School District will be November 12th. I'd like to appreciate Steve's dedication and his contributions during his time with us, and we will miss him dearly. In the meantime, Tim is working hard to find a temporary replacement, and we have initiated this job posting. We will keep you updated on the progress. I thank you for your support and commitment to the district, and we look forward to discussing these matters further at upcoming board meetings.
Do you have any questions? I guess everything except for the SRO, because we'll come back to that. So any questions for the superintendent before we get to that? Do we know why the systems administrator declined? Do you have any information?
I mean, the pay that we offered seemed to be fine. It just sounds like, talking to Tyler, it sounds like the guy had a couple different irons in the fire and went a different direction.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions about anything for Amy? Go ahead, Jay.
I just want to say that I'm very appreciative of all your work to align the elementary education in the district. I do think that that's been something that's been lacking for several years, and I think it's very encouraging that we're finally on the track to start to align the experiences of both elementary schools.
Thank you.
I echo MJ. I agree. Anything else we want to ask about this update? Okay. Turn it back to you for.
Sure. So I just wanted to go back to that MOU conversation. So as I said before, we had talked about our non-negotiables for that list, and they would like to keep the MOU as is in terms of the supervision of the SRO. They would like to maintain that under the Lebanon Police Department. They felt that they've already made changes to the uniform, and they do not want to make any changes in terms of firearm. As I mentioned before, in terms of office space, as you know, spaces are limited across our buildings. They are flexible about where we locate the SRO if we maintain that position, and certainly some of the language they agreed it needed to be cleaned up. So I'm looking for some guidance on where we are in terms of our non-negotiables in my next steps forward in terms of working with the police department.
I'll weigh in. I think for me, from what I'm hearing from our community, those two areas that are non-negotiable for them are the highest concern for our community and for me as a board member. So I think that it puts us in a difficult position to continue with the SRO MOU as is if we have no ability to navigate or change to a different model. Obviously, we still need a relationship with the Lebanon Police Department, so I guess I would be in favor of discontinuing this current SRO MOU and then creating another MOU that outlines our relationship going forward with the Lebanon Police Department. And Policy Committee, we've already seen a sample of that kind of, more of a liaison kind of agreement. And I guess I would be more apt to look at that kind of arrangement versus continue with a formal SRO program.
I did kind of give examples of other communities and their relationships with the SROs. They indicated that if we did not have the MOU, that we could not guarantee that we would have the same police officer responding to our schools during the day. And I asked about, particularly if we could provide additional training to the department, and that was something that they were looking to entertain at this point.
I have a question. The modifications to the uniform that they've already suggested, that's when he sometimes is not wearing full uniform?
Yeah, most of the time he's not wearing full uniform. He's wearing kind of a collared shirt with that piece from there. So that's that modification that they would like to continue.
Other opinions? Want to say anything at all?
I tend to agree with Wendy.
I do also, especially the supervision piece. If they're not willing to, work around that and offer us some supervision piece, that's pretty concerning to me as a board member.
Steve?
I mean, I guess if it's a jointly funded position, it should be a jointly supervised position, would be my thought.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think those are sort of some of the big sticking points that, for me personally as a board member, but also I think for the community at large, in terms of the firearm is the big community thing. So I would be inclined to either explore an alternative model, whatever that looks like. Not that we're expecting, and I think that's important to understand. We understand that we're not ever going to get the same person every single time. Although I don't think even with this current SRO, we'd necessarily get the same person every time. If there's two things happening at two places, we're going to get who we're going to get. So I recognize the usefulness that administrators and a social worker have pointed out that they find from the SRO, but I don't know that that's compelling enough for me. Not that I think that I think that there are flexible ways, because they've identified many ways that seemed like there were flexible options to be undertaken within this district and then in our relationship with LPD.
And I would be fine continuing through the end of this school year until we can sort of figure out, I mean, because he does serve a purpose of some sort. And so if we create an exit plan that would go into so continue sort of as is, we've already funded it through this school year, and then discontinue as of June 30th.
I think Lisa's raising her hand, sorry. Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I also agree with Lil and Wendy that we could move to this other model. They're unwilling to do. That's all.
So she said she agrees with Wendy and I that she is interested in moving to a different model if that were possible. Is that more or less what you said, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think Jam will capture what she's actually saying.
Excellent. We appreciate jam tonight. Steve. Perfect.
I guess my only reservation about saying I would wanna move away from this model in favor of another model would be to have details about what that other model looks like before making that kind of decision.
I mean, I agree. I think that's sort of what Wendy was saying, that the MOU stops in February, but that's the middle of an already funded
Right.
school year. So this position is funded through the end of June, no matter what happens. And so that would give us time to research and come up with
And I don't know if it's
something.
necessarily a different model. It's just, I mean, every school district has to have a relationship with their police department. That's just the reality of how we work together. So I think the MOU just formalizes what that relationship would look like and be like. It's not necessarily following a specific model, but I think we would come to some agreements as far as like expectations around.
Do we need to negotiate or vote on extending the MOU till the end of the school year? Because it expires in February, right?
Yes, would that be something I should put on the board for next time?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should check
to
with
have
Jim, or check
Sean's-
with our
yep.
legal counsel, but I think we'd have to, because it expires in February, we have to extend it, even though we've already funded the position through the end. But yeah, I think we'd have to officially extend it.
So I can put that on the agenda and speak with Mr. Shaughnessy, so that would go on the first meeting in December.
Probably.
So do we need a motion tonight to discontinue the, so like how are we going to handle it in our budget discussion? So like does it make sense to have a motion tonight
Or-
about the
Go ahead.
funding of that? Or,
Not sure we need one. Yeah, my understanding of the MOU was that if it's not in the budget, then the position is discontinued.
but I think it's in the budget as of, so we're going to have to remove it.
Amend the budget.
Amend the budget, which we'll be
Okay, but
doing
that's, yeah.
on budget day.
I mean, I would be impressed if you just take the budget and approve it.
Steve?
So I guess I'm gonna go back to my original point, is that it sounds like we are talking about a different model that's not funded. So before I could vote on discontinuing this model, I would like to know what we're moving towards. So we're choosing one model over another.
Jessica?
Well, I guess, I mean, I'm not sure that, I think that's one way, as I'm hearing it, that's one way we could do it. I'm not sure that's inherently what's happening, though, because I think if the conversation is sort of, we are heading towards discontinuing a particular situation, the question of whether we enter into a different situation is a separate question. They don't have to be considered hand in hand. They could be, but they don't have to be.
Well, we're making a decision that we're potentially not funding a position, so that's an entirely different model.
But I think that any town, Hanover for instance, that doesn't have an SRO, they create a relationship with their police department, which is probably, I mean, I don't know for sure if it's outlined in an MOU kind of thing, but we have the opportunity, I mean, we have to work together.
Correct.
And so I don't know, like, it just, what we're getting rid of is the formal SRO position, and then we need to have some discussions around expectations.
And whether we
how we
outline
work together.
whether we outline specific expectations or not, as you point out, they're still supporting the school district. I mean, that we're still in their jurisdiction, right? So this is part of their job to protect includes us, and includes the kids at all times, right? So I mean, it is, in an ideal world, I think there are a bunch of different ways that this could look. Even if nothing else happens, we're still part of that. We're still having relationship with them no matter what. It's just if we want to specify that relationship, if they want to specify that relationship, which we don't know yet, because we haven't really talked about that very much. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't in the negotiations.
Right, we talked about different models, and they had some feedback about models that hadn't worked, but they did say Obviously, if that we did not have an SRO, they would continue to provide services to the district, but they just wanted to let us know that it would, you know, we couldn't have one person coming and guarantee that person has training with working with students.
So what would be the cleanest for you guys for us to do today? Do you, I don't know. Do we have any opinions?
I mean, mine's all in budget, and for me, I don't need anything today. You know, whatever you do, if you take that money out, then certainly it's automatically empty. But whatever you get can't be extra. Like, you can't say, well, can you give us a little extra stuff for a contracted amount because you've removed all the money, so.
Right.
Right. I think that step would be for me to contact Jim O'Shaughnessy to talk about the extension of the MOU for the remainder of the school year. And with the common understanding is that if that's something that you would like us to remove from the budget, that would indicate for me to contact the police department and let them know that the position wouldn't be funded for the 24-25 school year, and then start conversations from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of the part that I am curious about in terms of this is like if we have those conversations, but we're also needing to, if we wanted to change something, if we wanted there to still be funding for something, for training, if we wanted to offer to sort of fund, I have no idea how this would work, but if we wanted to offer training to all the police department so that everybody knows how to deal with kids or whatever the thing is, if there was something that seemed compelling to the police department and to us that we could help fund, where would that, I'd be curious about, like, where would that money come from? Can we, as we put together the budget, I wouldn't want to see us sort of remove one piece and then have no contingency for these conversations carrying forward, potentially coming up with some new kind of relationship, which might also require some money, and not having any money for it. So I don't know how that would work, but
I would assume that there are grants out there for safety within the community. We looked it up.
So I did just look up, so the basic SRO course, this is from the National Association of SROs, right? So this is who has trained our current SRO. The basic SRO course costs $500 per person for national SRO members and $550 per person for NASRO members. And the advanced SRO course, which again is sort of beyond that, this first course is 40 hours of course, by the way. The second course is another 24 hours, and that is $400 per person for NASRO members and $450 for non-NASRO members.
So can one of the questions that we ask between now and our budget discussion be, where does Lebanon Police Department send officers for SRO training, and what, so if we wanted to sponsor 2 or 3, whatever, like, could we do something like that?
But also, though, I don't know that I have no idea what's in the SRO training per se,
Right.
and so I have no idea that on the basis of that's exactly what should happen. I think that it's an interesting question, but I feel like that would be potentially a very productive conversation for the superintendent to have with the police department, sort of like, if, because they may say, no, we're not doing any of those things.
Right.
And so
Right, and I
you
did speak a little bit about offering that training, and it wasn't hard yes at all, so I think,
Yeah.
I certainly could come back, looking to see.
40 hours of
Right,
time.
and
to
if
get
they were
is
interested
an
in-
awful lot.
Yeah.
That's true. But I could see it just seems to me that, like, some conversation in which it's clear, I would be very supportive of a conversation in which it's clear that we are looking to be good partners, good community partners with our police department, and that we value their help in terms of some of the tasks that are currently sort of being fulfilled in that way. And so how can we, like, what could the future look like, I guess, and I just want to make sure that there's some resources available to support that we don't just, am I making any sense? I'm saying a lot of words.
And I think that's something we can just do at our budget meeting too, is as when we're looking at those line items, to put something aside for community training.
If that's all it is, if all we need to do is just sort of have a different line item which says like community training
That
resources
sounds
or
easy in
something.
my budget mind.
Well, I was gonna say, up until, for way before me, up until 2 years ago, the SRO costs were included in a line called SAU Contracted Services, and at the request of this board or previous board, I made a separate line for the SRO specifically. So it was not outside of just a regular general contract for many, many years. So it'd be very easy to
Oh, great.
cut that line out and maybe put it, whatever dollar amount you want, back in that contracted services line, which makes it undesignated for anything specific. It's actually the way it was for years, and I didn't really want to create another line, but I was going to.
I like that idea.
I thought I saw a hand over here. Is there anybody else over here? No? Okay. Jane.
So I guess, I mean, we've kind of gone in a little bit of different direction, but if we're still talking about offering to pay for training, I think that we also have to realize that it's going to be a lot more than $500 per person, seeing as how it's 40 hours of training, because I don't think it would be unreasonable for them to ask, well, you need to cover our manpower that we have to, sub somebody in for that 40 hours of shift.
That's why I'm not actually, like, that was something Lil had suggested, or Lil had pulled up just as, I think, as a benchmark. Like, I actually don't really have any reason to think that a full SRO training to be offered to the force is like what we're looking for. I think it's more just a sense of like, if we have particular concerns as a school district and as a school board, which sort of seemed to me to be some of the gestalt of what was happening in our conversations with administrators about just sort of general police officers interacting with the school population, we could probably come up with some trainings in the world which might remedy some of that.
Agreed. That is exactly what I was doing. Let's give us any kind of benchmark that we can use to
Much
start
appreciated.
with. Okay, yes.
I guess, and then a second thought is, how was the question actually phrased about the supervising or having input on it? Because it seems like that kind of is a question that, I mean, I can understand them flat out saying, no, we have to have some supervision, but it does seem a little weird that they're unreasonable to give us more than advisory input when they are a contracted employee of ours. I'm just curious how that question was phrased and where they're.
Because they are a union employee that hired by the Lebanon Police Department, who we subcontract for that SRO piece. So they have their own collective bargaining and rules for that piece. Within our CBA, it does say that we can give feedback towards evaluation for that piece, but we don't necessarily participate in the evaluation process.
And I want to be careful in language. He's not a contracted employee of ours. He's a Lebanon police officer, and we are billed from the police department for his time in the schools, but he's not exclusively ours. I got in an accident in the 12A, and he was the guy who responded, so he's not exclusively ours, and he's a cop. He's not a school district employee in any way.
Okay. So I think the consensus is we're moving finishing of this discussion to budget day, and then we're going to have some conversations
Yep.
in between
Absolutely.
now and then. Does that seem like what everyone else thinks? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to the business administrator's update.
All right, so everybody should have a binder. If you don't have one, raise your hand, I'll get you one. But just, so I won't bury the lead. This expenditure budget is up 8.96%, which is the highest I think we've presented since I've been here. It is significantly lower than our conversations in October. You can find more details in the memo in the front. This is really just sort of an orientation. There's a tab for each school. Behind the, as you get further back in the binder, once you get past the district-wide tab, you'll see things for special ed and facilities, et cetera. Those are really informational. The budget memo in the front has a summary, and that's the 4 schools plus a district-wide SAU. That's the numbers. We worked really hard. The administrators worked really hard on this. I can honestly say, since I've been here 10 years, I think this is the hardest that I think we've worked as far as getting a really tight number. I know it seems big, but a really tight number to you. There's a proposed reduction in personnel. Every school has proposed reducing some personnel, and I don't say that for pity. I actually think that I'm proud of our administrators for being willing to offer up some changes. And you'll see that in the budget memo as well. Most of this budget is driven by rising special ed costs and the cost of benefits, insurance. This budget reflects the actual increase. During October, we talked about a 10% increase. Yesterday, after I had things printed out, I had to start over. We got the actual increase of 8%, so I made the adjustments, and that's what's reflected here. That number won't change, and it's for healthcare. It's $1 million, a little over $1 million. And that's driven by what people's choices. People are in the district now, what their choices are now. We've added more staff, special ed in particular. People have changed their health care. They've gone from cash back to getting on in many cases. So it's not an 8% increase. I think it's like 12 or 15%, but the premium rate is 8% higher. A family plan and the new rates, if you really want it. I'll bring that on Saturday. It's high 30,000 for a family plan now. It's not cheap.
So can I interrupt and ask just one question about that? Just one.
One leads to another.
Yeah. So I noticed in our LEA CBA that in the appendix, it states sort of like the specific insurance provider.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything in the language of the CBA that allows us, like, so if these insurance rates continue to go up in crazy amounts,
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way or any trigger that allows us to renegotiate with a different provider?
Well, I would say, I'm on the, just so you know, I'm on the board of directors for New Hampshire Interlocal Trust, which is Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. So I'm acutely aware of there's basically three options. There's for municipalities and schools. There's Health Trust, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's school care, which is what our two big unions have, which is Cigna, and New Hampshire Interlocal Trust is much smaller, but they're Harvard Pilgrim, and they're growing. So I'm open to that sort of idea. It takes we have to check the very specific language of the CBAs. I have to check with Jim O'Shaughnessy to see if it specifies school care or similar plan, for example. And I actually don't know what the wording is off the top of my head.
I think
So that would allow us to do that. If it doesn't allow us to do that, then we need to make sure during negotiations that language is added in there so we
Right.
can go out to bid.
Right, I
So-
think in the body of the CBA, it doesn't specify, but in the appendix,
Mhm.
it does. And so are we held to what the appendix says or what the language of the?
Yeah. So, and I would also say, and I'm not opposed to doing an RFP for healthcare. If we can do that, I'm not opposed to that anyway. I've actually checked out dental a couple of times. Dental doesn't really, it hasn't increased since I've been here, but, I've gone down that road a little bit, and it's like gives and takes, and it's like, we haven't switched because I didn't see any benefit to it, but, doing an RFP for healthcare maybe makes a lot of sense. I would say that I know that our health trust rates, which is, for us, it's only our administrative assistants, that rate increases 18%. It's in this budget. And I'll just tell you that the school rate for New Hampshire Interlocal Trust was just published at 7.8% increase. So right now, everybody's in the same boat, and there's a million reasons. Obviously, these rates aren't just pulled out of the air. They use actuarials and stuff. But I do think we've not done an RFP for healthcare since I've been here, and I wouldn't be opposed to, it's a heavy lift. But if our CBAs allow us to, or if the board wants the CBAs to say that, then that, we need to go down that road. Good question. There is, and I want to give you a good orientation without opening up a huge budget discussion, because I want you to read it and study it. There is a request for addition in the district-wide staff. One is to bring an IT guy that is contracted, get rid of that contract, bring that person in-house, get 5-day week service. The net increase is $15,000 to the district. And there is a desire to expand our HR department to a real HR staff instead of one person. I would love to talk more about that on Saturday, but we feel passionate enough that it's in the budget. We had a work session on October 30th, and we reduced the budget that's before you by over $500,000. So, like I said, everybody tightened their belts. There is a cap reserve contribution at the request of the board in here. The number was totally arbitrary. First it was $400,000. This one reflects $200,000. It can be as much or as little as you want. It's just the idea of putting money in up front to the cap reserve instead of after at the end of the year. There are two new tabs. There's an athletics tab and a transportation tab. Transportation is really, it just pulls out the transportation lines and put them in one place for you. Athletics tries to show you, and you'll see there's a lot of stuff in there, all the costs by sport. There's a list of all the stipends. And as you go looking through this, I want to be clear to point out that the dollar amount that's in the budget for athletics and co-curriculars is set by the CBA. Can't be changed. And the stipend list is set up by a committee that's also in the CBA. So the committee has teachers, it has administrators, it has a superintendent. I'm not on it. But that committee sets up what the stipend list will look like, and that's what drives that. So it is in there, mostly for informational as far as that goes. You also see costs of transportation and what we pay for coaches, all kinds of stuff. So enjoy that tab.
I am enjoying that tab.
Well, the information that's in there might be the same as you've seen. I don't know. It's fresh. It's hot off the presses around noon today. So, and really thanks to Mike Stone and to Ian for really doing a lot on that. In facilities, we were asked, I put a list of major contracts that came up during our October meeting. So you'll find a 8.5 by, it's bigger. You have to fold it out. What do you call it? It's not letter. It's next size up. A sheet of all of our major contracts at facilities. You can see what we've paid over the last 3 years. It's not just contracts, you know, like we don't have a contract for fire protection, but we spend 15 grand, so I put it on there, so you can enjoy that.
I will, thank you.
I want to say there's a revenue sheet in here. Our estimated revenues as of now, revenues meaning not tax revenue and not fund balance contribution, just the other revenue lines. This does show an increase in revenues of $628,000. Mostly basically it's tuition right now. I do not have estimated revenues from the state yet. You will probably get a new revenue sheet on Saturday. I usually get that before the meeting. So right now you'll see that most of the revenues match what we're getting this year, just because I don't have any estimates from the state yet. The other thing is I project in this budget, as we have been, $1 million fund balance contribution. It comes into effect because when you look at the tax rate for this year, the tax bills you just got, it had, going back to it, a $1.8 million contribution from you guys signed the form for that. We had $1.8 million left over, mostly in excess revenue. So when you're talking about revenues that drive this final tax rate in this proposed budget, we're projecting $1 million down from 1.8, if you see what I'm saying. So that hopefully artificially drives the tax rate up. So we project $1 million. If we end up with 1.2, hopefully, I don't know. I mean, it seems like we're having a rough year, but to be honest with you, I've been so focused on this that I haven't looked at our budget right now very much. But it's kind of a two-edged sword. The expenditures is going up, and even though our revenues projected are up a little bit, we're coming down 800 grand from what we actually got on our tax bills this year. So this budget,
I'm sorry.
yes.
What tax year, so this budget that we'll be talking about, it's a 24-25
Right.
fiscal year, but what year
Your-
tax does it, like, so do we get our tax money up front in like June of July of 2024, or do we get our money in June of 2025?
If whatever budget gets approved in the next few months will hit your tax bills, your November tax bill next year, November 24, next year. As far as the money, once this budget's approved in March, the city by law has an obligation. I actually give them a tax payment schedule, and I modify it after it's about time to modify it. So I will give them a tax payment schedule in April, and we will start we get paid in installments from July until May. So like every month we get a $3.1 million check from the town. So we get our money up front, and it's their job by law to collect the money from. This actually came up during COVID.
But do they, when they set the rate to collect our money, then they're setting it in December, like our December bill?
Right, so DRA tells them what the tax rate is. So I file the DOE 25, they collect that with the stuff from the budget, I guess it was approved the previous January from the city. I actually don't get involved in the city stuff, but they take the city documents plus our school district documents from September 1st, and they say, this is what your tax rate is. So the tax rate is based on how much money we had left in June from our side, the local education side. I'm reporting to them that $1.8 million left over from June. I put that to them in September, and then they set a tax rate from that. And that tax rate comes out at the end of October for your tax bills you just got. So, hope that makes sense. This budget, with the revenue projections that I have, is $1.75 on a tax rate. For a $500,000 house, that's $875. When I started this job, I think we used 200 grand. I just picked 500. I figured that was reasonable these days. On Saturday, I'll probably give you an updated revenues. I don't think anything else is going to change. The LEA and the LSS had to let us know by November 1st who was going to retire. That's why this list was pretty extensive. They do have to December 1st to tell us if they're going to change tracks. So I'm probably not going to redo it for one or two people, but if there's a lot of people that come in over the next couple of weeks, I might give you a new budget with updated personnel costs, but I'm not planning on that. So, enjoy.
Any small questions for Tim? I mean, basic questions, because detailed questions we will talk about on the 18th.
Just thank you guys for all of your work.
Yes.
This is a lot of work, and it sounds like all the administrators worked incredibly hard to pull together on this. It's big numbers, but thank you guys a lot.
Thank you for saying that. I don't think my staff will see this, but I want to make sure I publicly thank everybody in the SAU, people coming out of the woodwork, asking to help me. Even we have a substitute at the administrative assistant. She helped me. Shay helps me all the time. Heidi helped me. So just even putting this together is just a lot of copying and hole punching. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that moves us on to unfinished business and our discussion of board goals. Do we want to go ahead and do let's do the second reading. We're going to switch this. I'm sorry, Kamala. We'll do the second reading of these policies, and then we'll move board goals to the end of that, just because the second reading is not going to take very long. So we need a motion.
So
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to accept the policies listed under unfinished business. Well, first I'll ask, does anybody want to pull, after reviewing them for a second time, are there any policies listed in this unfinished business section that we want to pull out and talk individually about?
Well, I just have a question, because we have under G, it's listed as policy EBBD, but the policy that was in the packet is EEBD. So just wondering what policy we're actually talking about.
Yeah, that's a typo.
Don't need to look at my notes.
It's EEBD, right?
Yeah, I think it's a typo. It's
Okay, so EEBD was what was in the packet.
Yes.
So
Yes, it should
G
be.
just needs to be changed then.
Let me just verify with the School Board Association since that should
Okay, while we're checking for that, are there any other policies that anybody wants to pull after having looked at them a second time? No. All right, we'll pause while we figure out the name of this policy.
All right. Actually, the policy is EBBD.
EBBD. Okay, so it's wrong.
BBD.
So then it's wrong.
It's wrong
On the policy.
On the policy.
Indoor air and water quality is policy EBBD from priority from the School Board Association.
Okay, so I guess that header just needs to be
So the header.
changed on the.
Okay, so ours is wrong.
Yeah, just the header is wrong.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yes, okay. Okay. Just move. That's fine. Okay.
So I guess then just one more point of order. So if we go through and do a nomination as a group, can we then go ask individual questions on certain policies for
If we're
some edits?
wanting
or-
to ask specific questions, I think we should pull that out of the group.
Yes. So it should,
it's
ostensibly,
just
this will
like
make it faster. Yeah. If they're just grammatical questions, then we can just turn those into Amy for Lori to correct. But if they're substantive questions, then, and we can just pull that one out and talk about that one specifically and pass the rest of them on through their second reading. No rush.
There's too many.
It's a busy committee.
It is a busy committee.
And we keep getting busier.
We do.
Like,
It's just the second readings one, not the new ones.
Okay, so these are new ones? Oh, this one, I guess. Okay, so maybe I just have a question on
Okay.
HBCA.
That's the only one.
Yeah.
So do you want to pull that one out, or do you want to, is it a big question or a little question?
It's a little question.
Okay, so we have a little question, just a little question on IHBCA, the pregnant students. Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I just have a question. It says on the the fourth paragraph, any staff member who learns that a student is pregnant or is informed of such by the pregnant student will immediately inform the building principal, the school nurse, and the school guidance counselor. So is that really they have to go run to all three, or is that, should be an either or? I mean, that seems kind of aggressive that the onus is to go suddenly find three people and tell them.
We did discuss
We
that
did this.
paragraph.
Yeah. All those people need to know if a student.
But it doesn't seem like that should be the responsibility of the staff member. I mean, to me, it seems like the staff member at the very least should inform the principal, and then it would be the principal's job to pull in staff as needed. But the onus shouldn't be on the staff member. I think that's an undue burden to then go inform all these people.
Are we able to change it? Like, there was, I don't remember details about it because we had the same.
Yeah, is this an
Is
RSA
there
thing?
something about it's RSA mandated?
It doesn't say anything about per RSA in the policy.
We talked about the reason to it.
yeah, and I think that, sorry if my policies were a little more organized, I might, or if there weren't so many. I mean, I think we felt that even if there was some concern about that it probably made sense to just leave it. Seeing if I have the.
It may have been because school nurse being medical, school guidance counselor,
Right.
right, having resources.
The building principal knows.
Social worker is not on there.
But again, I don't think it should be the burden should be on the staff member to find. I mean, they should find whoever they report to, which presumably ultimately is the building principal, and then they should know the protocol of who needs to be informed after at that point.
I mean, does it specify, like, is there a specification in there about, like, consequences if they don't?
I think, I think, so this is a recommended policy, it's not necessarily required. But I think that, so the New Hampshire School Board Association note from 2016 is, significant additions are made to this policy in response to member requests for guidance relative to school district responsibilities with respect to pregnant students. New Hampshire School Board Association reminds its members that matters involving student pregnancy are significantly complex. New Hampshire School Board Association advises its members to contact local legal counsel in the event of such do you know, so I think it's just sort of making sure that I think we felt comfortable leaving it because it sort of gets all the people that should be involved in helping to support that student involved instead of like somebody, but I don't know, I mean.
Well, I guess I'm not saying not get them involved, but I don't think it should be the onus on the person that found out that the student was pregnant to have to
But it's-
go
I think-
rally all the troops.
But
It
it's
should
a
be.
quick email,
Right.
essentially, to 3 people.
Right, is
Do
making
you
sure
want to do
everyone-
that via email?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's protected health information that I don't think you should transmit electronically.
What does immediately mean? I mean, from a staffing perspective, it's like, okay, you violated policy because you told the school principal and the nurse, but you didn't tell the guidance counselor. Like, I don't know, just as a staff person, I'm like, ooh.
So you're gonna say like within 24, 48 hours type of
I
thing
don't know.
instead of immediately?
So let's pull this one out.
Yeah.
Because
That was a bigger
Gwen,
question.
did you have the original policy we have? Because I know this was adopted in 2016 and we just revised it, so I was just wondering what our original language was.
I've got,
I mean, I guess I don't know, but it strikes me that I know we are having a little bit of an issue pushing policies through to completion. Am I correct about that? And
We have a lot of policies to
We
go
have a
through.
lot of it just strikes me, like, I don't feel that this is a particularly material question, to be honest. Like, I think I understand where it's coming from, and I, at the same time, don't feel like there's nothing in the policy which says, and if you don't, we're firing you. It sort of just says, like, please do this thing, and it specifies who those people are, and it says immediately, which to me means don't wait 3 weeks before you, so I guess additional clarity to me, I think the extent to which we push for that on all questions and policies means we will never get through policies in a way that is important for this board to do. So I just feel a little bit concerned about, I mean, if the policy committee wants to take it back and look at it again and whatever, fine. But that level of issue does not strike me as being the kind that we should be grinding our policy process to a halt for. So I feel concerned about that. Like, that doesn't seem that problematic to me.
Our
I guess
original
I just-
policy is very limited in language, so
Right.
we looked at what the School Board Association recommended, and
Right, that's
we did adopt their language from the policy committee.
So, but I think.
But I guess I disagree a little bit on this one because I feel like this, to Stephen's point, is some protected health information. And pregnant students do have also some rights, guarded by the state of New Hampshire once you're over a certain age about who you can or have to tell your medical information to. So I guess
Right, all of these
I'm
people would-
concerned on a couple of
Right.
these points, not just the onus on the poor staff member that has to go and report it to everybody. I guess I think having one point of contact, the building principal, makes more sense to me, but also to protect the student's privacy, because I think we're forgetting, and in this particular instance, you're talking about health information that the student does have a certain right to privacy to in the state of New Hampshire.
Right, and we do have to inform the principal, the nurse, and the guidance in this particular case, because the principal requires for the safety, school nurse for the medical pieces for that student that is in our care, and the guidance in terms of the student needing family medical leave. Also, as we had passed earlier, our nursing in the schools.
So I think.
Nursing mothers policy.
So I think that an easy, so to going back to Jessica's point and also to MJ's point, I think an easy change then is to just say they will immediately inform the building principal, who will inform the school nurse and school guidance counselor. I mean, then it's, all those people are informed, but the principal is the one that this person is talking to. And I think it creates, because I agree with MJ that I think if I'm a random staff member and I happen to find out, and then I have to have a conversation with the nurse or have to have a conversation with the guidance counselor, it's totally possible that additional information that I don't need to have could come up in that conversation. I just need to let my supervisor know. And
You probably should be careful about transmitting that information through non-secure channels. So our email is not secure. So you shouldn't send that information by email.
so I wonder, then if the point person should be the nurse, because she's going to be the one that, I mean, like, so is our nurse, we're talking about HIPAA violations and stuff like that, and are we bound by HIPAA?
Right, I think if you look at one of here, that staff members cannot promise that information told to the staff member by the student will remain confidential. Staff members should inform the student that pertinent laws may require the staff member to share information if the student's health, safety, or welfare is at risk.
So FERPA supersedes HIPAA, is what we're saying.
Right, but we also have we have a responsibility to try and make it secure. So if you go and tell the principal who tells the nurse and blah, blah, if we're mandated to do that, fine, that's great, but it shouldn't be via the teacher sending an email to the group, which the email is not secure.
Okay, so we need to take this one out of the motion, right? Let's just do that. So we're gonna go back to the, where we're starting. And we'll take this one out of our discussion. So H is removed from the motion that Wendy is about to make. Or anybody can make, actually.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the following policies in, listed under unfinished business, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I.
Okay. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mary seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tia?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lisa? Yes. All right, unanimous. Thank you very much. And then IHBCA, what do we do with that?
So I guess, I mean, I don't. What do you want us to do with this?
What do you recommend?
I mean, I think we should, if you want it to, I would prefer it goes to the principal, since the principal supervises and they will inform the other one. I think that would be fine for the language.
Okay. So just a modification of language versus.
Yeah, that would go to the principal can inform.
And do we feel like we need to specify how that communication happens?
I think we have other policies on electronic communication and confidentiality that would cover that piece.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve policy IHBCA, pregnant students, with the modified language of stating that the student will, or the staff member will immediately inform the building principal, who will then notify the school nurse and school guidance counselor.
Yep. Can we get a second? Steve seconds. Okay. Another roll call vote. Kevin?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Tia?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lisa? Once again. Thank you. Unanimous. All right. Where are we? What time is it? Yeah. No, it's goals. Okay. So we're moving to our next agenda item under unfinished business, which is board goals. There was supposed to be a photocopy of this in your packet, which there is not. So I'm going to pass one out. So if you could just take one of these and pass them around. These are the same. These are the same ones that you've seen in the electronic document. So I just want you to have a physical copy in case you don't have a computer here. So these, as they are stated here, include all of the feedback that everyone sent to me via email, all of the suggestions that people had. Lisa, if you want to look at the electronic version of the document that I sent via email, that's what I'm also looking at. What we need to decide now is which of these do we want to go forward with? Do we want to revise the language of? Do we want to put on hold for another time, et cetera, et cetera? Some of these, you'll notice in the first 6 of them, some of them are shared goals, and it might behoove us to articulate which of this is our responsibility, and maybe focus just on board goals, or articulate what part of that goal is board focused as opposed to shared, but that's up to you guys. So there are 10 of them, which is a lot. Some of them are easier to achieve than others. So I guess the question now is, where would we like to go from here? Where would you all like to go from here?
I think personally, I would like to pare down the goals because I think 10 is too aggressive, and that we really need to concentrate on just maybe 4 top goals for the year, because a lot of them have a lot of heavy lift, including revising the strategic plan. So I think we need to focus our efforts.
And I think specifically the strategic plan, that is a shared goal. I think I would argue for that goal to be actually changed to this articulating a vision or mission for the school district, a board vision or mission, because that's going to help dictate where that strategic plan goes. So instead of saying, let's revise the strategic plan, which of course we're going to be a part of, I think it'd be more helpful if we just articulated what is our vision, mission, whatever we want to call it, for the Lebanon School District, which can then guide the strategic plan. So a more specific board task. I think maybe number 2 we're already doing, and that perhaps that doesn't need to be a goal anymore. We've started to do that. I think we're making good progress on that. So perhaps number 2 can just be deleted. I think 3 is probably important to keep because we're going to be involved in this the superintendent evaluation process partially now, but then another full year happening. So we need to have it be as articulate as possible. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I think some of these, and I think I said this when we met about these, some of these strike me as tasks rather than goals. Create and implement an effective superintendent evaluation process, to me, is a task. Like, we need to evaluate the superintendent, making sure that it's effective is part of that. That doesn't strike me as a goal. That's a thing we have to do. So I'm not in favor of like losing sight of that as a task we need to accomplish, but it's not a particularly and I feel the same way about number 2. To me, it feels, I don't even know if that's a task, but I agree that it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't strike me as it's not something I want to lose sight of, but I also don't feel like a lot of good steps have been taken there, and
I agree. I think my only sort of response to that would be, I think that goals without measurable tasks are not goals. They don't ever get done, right? Like if you have a goal to do a thing and there's not a measurable thing that you can do. So I agree, but I think
totally.
I think tasks are part of goals, and that they are, you can't really have the goal without the task. So that's.
But I don't think our goal was to, if and I may be mistaken, if our idea here was to set a list of our tasks for the year, then that's fine. Then those things would be very reasonably included. But if this was intended to be a little bit more of a head pickup and looking around and sort of the things that need a little bit more coordination, those are striking me as being a little distinct. Likewise, creating a comprehensive communication plan. Some of these strike me as things that are happening, that are part of the work that is being done on you guys are sending out the survey. Like, some of these things are less aspirational, some are more. I don't know if we want to distinguish.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of these started with our board self-evaluation in March. So the reason some of them are in process are because we already sort of established those as goals.
Okay.
So, so I think we should continue to see which ones we I don't know.
Right.
I'm still stuck in policy.
Right.
I agree. I mean, it seems like why some of them are working, because we are actually in the middle of the year, right? These goals were supposed to be defined in June, and we just
Or
never,
March.
right, never clearly defined them. So,
Right. So-
we've already started, kudos to us for working on them, even though they weren't written down as an official goal, but.
Right. Right, this is true. I mean, as you can say, they were addressed at the retreat, they were revised again, now we're at another place. I mean, they've been going through
I think-
iterations.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that, like, I don't really care, truthfully, about the difference between a task and a goal. It's kind of a stupid semantic point, except for the fact that, I guess the thing that always comes up for me in sort of strategy and planning is the like Winston Churchill quote about plans are of little importance, but planning is essential. To me, this was an incredibly helpful process because some of the things are already happening because we talked about them. They were raised in a group session. We talked about them. They're happening. That's great. There are some things, though, that that's less true. One of them for me, number 9, an early childhood education conversation with stakeholders. This is one that's been brought up several times in various ways. We had a vote in the Finance and Facilities Committee to recommend that the board put together a working group, whatever, some kind of a group to, multi-stakeholder group to try to talk about it. We punted on that a bit until the new superintendent was in place. But that's one that to me has sort of implications across multiple years, across a lot of different departments, across the entire city. That to me is a little bit harder to get going, but also incredibly important, particularly as we see the impact of the rising cost of special education. It's a lot easier to address those things when kids are younger, then it gets a lot more expensive and a lot harder the older they get. I would really like to, I would put that in a different category in terms of goals versus tasks, just because it's a little harder to make progress on it until everybody has said, yeah, we really want to have a conversation about this in a more kind of defined way. If the group says that that's not something they want to do, fine, but I guess clarity on things like that, which are a little more complex to me, is part of what this goal setting process should be.
Other thoughts? Thanks.
On that topic or something?
No,
else?
about the goals in general, on this topic of goals.
I really think we should continue working on the legislative advocacy, especially the way New Hampshire's moving right now. It's not looking good.
Mhm.
And I think the more districts that get involved, the more people in DOE and the government will see that we're not happy and parents aren't going to be happy. And it's not the best for our students, what they're doing, so.
I agree.
So what if we want to, for this year, given we're sort of where we are, if we want to say, instead of board goals, like these are board areas of focus kind of thing. And so then when we do our evaluation in March, maybe we can think about more specific goals and just sort of see where we land. But I think, all of these items are important for us to sort of keep our attention around. And so I would like us to continue that, and then maybe in a more formal way, when we get sort of back into our normal cycle.
Is there a way that we can do long-term goals, short-term goals, and maybe parse them out? Because I do think the early childhood education, early intervention is really important. And again, there's not a lot of clarity around what the actionable steps are necessarily, but I don't want to lose sight of it either. But, so is there a way that we can have a different list of short-term goals, long-term goals? That's what I do with my mental health treatment plans. I space them out, right? So it makes sense for me to have have it that way, but maybe not anybody else. So.
I mean, I think that's one, I don't have a problem with that. I guess I think, though, one other way of looking at this would be things that are done by particular individuals versus things which are required sort of joint action. So the increased legislative advocacy topic
That takes
that
the
Mary.
whole board, because everyone votes on that.
It does, but it doesn't take the entire board to increase the level of activity around it, as I think we've seen, in the sense that I feel like Tia and Mary have really taken a lot of initiative on that and brought it to the board in a way that I think has been very effective and really appreciated by me, at least. And so I think like that's great. And but there are other topics which to me aren't it's not possible to do in the same way, because they're not one-offs in the same way. And so I guess like, you know, the early childhood education piece, to me, I'm not trying to set it as a thing that is more or less important. I'm trying to say it's a different creature. It has like legislative matters that you guys bring to the board that we vote on, support, not support, like a little bit, there is a mechanism for doing that sort of relatively straightforwardly within a meeting. Conversations about something which kind of exists, kind of doesn't, is a major issue. Like it's a little harder to understand how to move forward with that. So I guess, you know, how do we do that? You know, I feel like I've asked the board to set up a working group. It hasn't happened. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure, you know, and so I'm, I guess, looking for, it's a little frustrating to feel like I'm willing to put in the time, I'm willing to sort of, you know, help spearhead this, I'm willing to have the conversations, but it is the kind of thing that is not we vote on this one time and say yay or nay. It's not that. This is a much longer term project. This is incredibly important. I get that nobody else has kids who are this young, except for Tia has one young kid who's already past this age. So I get that this isn't top of mind for everybody else, but
My clients are that age, though.
it's a little frustrating to feel like, what now?
So who would be in charge of setting up and creating a working group? That seems like the
My understanding
step.
would be the board.
Right, I think where we came, and I have to recall from our minutes, but where we came down on this was we didn't want to make this a priority of the district without having consulted with Amy. So we had done that, and we wanted to see what kind of a priority this was for her as part of her first year going forward, because there are lots of areas of concern and lots of areas of priority, and we didn't want to dictate what her plan was going to be before she came. So I think that's where we were at that point, was waiting. And then we didn't have another conversation about goals because it got moved and moved and moved. And so now we're having a conversation again. We're coming back to this. I mean, I think this is, for me, that's the usefulness of having goals at all, is that it's easy because there are so many immediate problems that come up and immediate things that we have to resolve. It's easy to forget about more long-term things and more complicated things, because unless we have something that's reminding us of it. And that's why I feel like it's helpful to have the things that remind us. But yeah, we hadn't made any, that was where we stopped.
I think just in general, just looking at the list, where 10 items feels overwhelming in light of all the other things we have to like get through and do. So I think if we could get it down to a list of 3 things, start there, focus in on there, and then we can actually talk about how to go off in those directions, right? Like actually get something done. For example, if we do decide focus on early child education, then we take the steps, right? But I think, yeah, having 10 is just, we're not gonna get anything done on any of them.
Sure. Okay, so I think we have just talked about the fact that 2 is already happening, so we can take just 2. Let's eliminate some right off the top. What are some suggestions? I'm suggesting we eliminate 2.
Seems like the communication plan is in place. SRO sounds like we're moving towards finishing that, right? I think. Superintendent evaluation process, that feels like that's just gonna happen.
It's not.
And it's
just
not.
It
happen.
doesn't
It
do
doesn't-
that.
this is a new process, so we have
So it's a
created
new
a new
process,
process.
okay.
Yeah, so that one, we actually, I mean, I think we have to keep that one because it is something that we are obligated to do. It's part of our,
Well, I think the thing that goes with that is the superintendent evaluation and the board self-evaluation.
Mhm.
Like those sort of go together.
But I would also argue that the communication plan isn't in place. I mean, I think that maybe the foundation work has started, but when I also think of communication, I think of, the entire gamut of how we communicate with parents, how we communicate with the public through our websites. I think there's a major overhaul in how we communicate and present ourselves that needs to be done. And I think that, yes, the work is beginning, but I think that still needs to be a board goal because it's something that's been talked about for years, and it's been something that people have been really upset about for years.
But is that, so is that like, Amy administrative staff directed kind of thing? Or are we talking specifically about how the board communicates with our constituent? Because
those are 2 different things.
right. I mean, so,
think
like,
I
it doesn't make sense to me to take on goals that then we direct Amy and her staff.
Right, because I would say that would be a superintendent goal. but,
Right.
Then there should be board goals and then district.
And our
But-
board goals can align with
Right.
each other. And so I think if we're going to say communication, it's more like, do we want to talk about how the board communicates?
And
I
what
guess-
policies that are created that drive that conversation.
I guess I would argue that part of our goals is what is important to us, and then it trickles down into the management plan that we give the superintendent, so.
But I think these goals are our goals. Like, what is the work of the board and how do we, I think too often we sort of create goals that then are somebody else's responsibility. But I think what Lil is trying to get us to do is to think about, as a group, what do we want to accomplish?
I guess then it goes back to, there's a philosophy that needs to be discussed then. Is the purpose of the board goals specific to what exactly we want to accomplish, or the board goals is what we want to see happening for the district for the year, which our employee then also helps execute, right? So I think our goals as a board are actually defining the action items that we want the superintendent to take.
So I think my perspective is that that's what the strategic plan is, right? So if we have a mission, we have a vision for what we want to accomplish, big picture, long-term vision. And then the strategic plan, which we are also a part of formulating, but that is led by the administration, is then their vision, their plan for how to get that vision accomplished, right? So I don't think that we have to sort of dictate all of those pieces, because I think that's what the strategic plan is going to be doing. But at this point, we haven't articulated an overarching idea of what we do and why we do it and what we envision for the school district going forward. So, but and this is the same conversation we had before. Like, we have a difference of opinion on like who we're making these goals for. And I think the superintendent makes goals for herself as part of her evaluation process. We are supposed to make goals for ourselves as part of our evaluation process. And we historically err on the side of making goals that we punt off to some other people and say, fix this, we'd like you to fix it. And I think we need to fix ourselves.
I think that's where, like, the overarching, I think typically we've had sort of like that we're to continue sort of overseeing the strategic plan. So I think that's where that general goal is always sort of part of our thing, because it helps to set that direction and our responsibility in overseeing that. But I think that sort of covers that, and then the rest of the goals, it feels like should be specific to us and the work that we do. such as overhauling policy. And or the CIP thing and collaborating more with the city on that.
Okay. So we're still, so far it looks like we have maybe some agreement that goals 2, as they stand right now, goals 2 and 7 can be eliminated because they're already happening. This is something we're doing.
Perhaps regrouped. Put them in the category of currently in process. We're happy with
Right.
where they are.
I mean, we're not saying they're going, but yes, that they're just
So
not.
maybe there's a category of like, we're happy with these things are doing well. Maybe
Okay.
that's like, and then there may be goals which we still feel strongly about and are not as happy with where they are.
Okay.
So I think 8 is valuable.
8, which is the CIP, Facilities Improvement Plan, or whatever we're going to call that. And then 9, Jessica has expressed her feelings about 9, which I think we have talked about before, and we understand that. 10, so 10 is a goal that we've had multiple times. I think that we are, the administration has already been making efforts to figure this out. I think this is more right now, it's more a district administration. This is the DEI, sorry.
No.
This is JDIB, yeah, committee. So they're trying to resolve this and sort of create a structure for moving forward with this, because we have our statement of DEI, but that's all we have. So that it feels like for now might be a district administration goal, so we don't really have to include it in ours. The comprehensive communication plan, again, I mean, I think this is, I would be in favor of changing that to be articulate the board's communication plan about the board, because I don't think we do a good job of communicating with anybody, really, about what we do and what we just sort of let everybody else communicate for us. So that's my suggestion.
I mean, I think that's fine. I don't feel strongly about that being a strong goal for the board, to be honest. Like, if we have something to communicate about, let's get good at communication. If we don't have anything we need to communicate about, I don't see why improving our communication is a strong goal, to be honest. Like, I think that, like, I prefer to see goals that are serve a thing that we are trying to do. Like, we aren't going to be good at everything. We aren't going to prioritize everything. Making priorities means deprioritizing other things. And so I'm less interested, like, what is it that we're trying to communicate out that we're not communicating out about? I haven't heard a lot of discussion in these meetings about saying, gee, so I guess I would want to understand perhaps there is something that, like, I'm not aware of, where our inability to communicate with some group of people has been a major stumbling block. That's fine, but I would prefer to see that problem raised and then the solution be presented, rather than just saying we should get better at we don't communicate well.
Well, I think it does show up in some of the surveys and stuff like that have historically happened.
Okay, but just because it shows up in a survey, that doesn't mean that it needs to become a priority to improve. We have a lot of things we could try to improve. Why that one?
I wouldn't put it high on my list, though. I do think we should continue to, again, essentially support Tia's efforts in increasing legislative act. I mean, it's something you've kind of spearheaded. I also think it's great, and so in that case, we may have to communicate about that. But
sure,
that's subservient.
But then there's a purpose to it. I mean, like, exactly. I agree. Like, if there's a thing where we're like, hey, we have this legislative action that we'd like to be better about, and we'd like to do more of it, and currently we don't have a way to do that. Great, then fine, let's make a communication plan. But
so I'm basically advocating that I think increased legislative advocacy is a good goal.
And I agree. I think we need to publicize it more, that the board is taking action, so that the citizens, the parents of these kids know what's going on. Because who knows if they know anything about what's going on.
I think your board goal could then, like, the board strives to increase advocacy through this, and then your actions would be legislative committee attending speaking out on that piece, so, right, so what does the board strive to do, is to better the outcomes for students and advocate for legislation that supports public schools.
Right.
And what is the actions? You set up a legislation committee, you're gonna be speaking out on legislative events and then reporting them out to the community.
Yeah, Mary, you want to do a legislative committee?
Sign you up.
Committee of two.
Right, like, so I think that, like, if your board goes, like, the board strives for that, the board strives for equitable outcomes for all
I think-
students, actions, could be early childhood ed, reviewing policy, section I, instruction, C, whatever, for some, I
Right.
think that, so I think you gotta look at that global, like what Jeff was talking, it was like, what's our global target? And then here are those actions that you're gonna go ahead to do. And then I think communication can thread through all of them.
I think the board historically just hasn't, I mean, when I was chair, I had to communicate a bit during COVID. But I think generally our constituents aren't used to hearing from the board. So I think that what we can do, maybe not make it a formal goal, but I think what we're hearing around the table is that, we should look for opportunities or take the opportunities when they arise naturally to have the board feel like we can communicate with our constituents and that not everything has to come through Amy or our principals or things like that. So recognizing those opportunities and taking them, I think, is important. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a goal.
I think I feel the same way about number 4, the NSHMBA stuff and professional development. To me, it's like, no, professional development is not a goal in and of itself. It should be aligned
An
with
expectation.
It should be set up as, what are we professionally developing towards? What is the thing that, like, yes, great, NSHMBA, if we have things that we needed to do, it's not a goal in and of itself. It's
You strive to be a more effective and efficient board.
Right, and if we think NSHMBA
Right.
is a tool, as a way, if we
Right,
think
that would be your
increased, participation in trainings and whatever else, that's a task, that's a thing we can do in order to achieve a goal. It's not a goal in and of itself.
I guess that I kind of disagree on, because I think that has been a very weak point for several years on here, that we have many board members, myself included, that are new to kind of the educational realm. And I think that unless we set a goal for people to attend some of these basic education workshops that are offered, then we can't always have good discussions that we need to have to move items along. So I think that just setting a basic goal that there's an expectation to have, attend a certain number of these trainings or a certain level, or even pick them out so that we all have the same foundation of which to then have robust discussions,
I wonder,
would enhance
so,
us as a board.
As you're saying that, I wonder if what the bigger thing is, like, the board should establish a list of norms. Right? And so under those norms, then our participation in training and communication and blah, 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 whatever we want to sort of list under that. But I think we haven't really articulated sort of what our expectations are, what our norms we feel like are important norms to be able to function effectively.
Or even, I guess you could even put it that a board goal is to establish almost an orientation process for new members. I know we went through this last year in the mentors, but it does feel like someone that's new to the board and is entering the education realm for the first time could really benefit and become a productive board member quickly by just attending 2 or 3 and getting up to speed in a lot of the educational terminology. So even outline the norms as part of the orientation program, which I don't think we have a formalized one per se, and that I think that would be a good goal, is this is our expectation, and once you get elected to the board, that you'll get up to speed quickly on these certain areas.
Okay, I have a suggestion. Amy has just sent me the Portsmouth School Board goals, which are actually doing the kind of thing that she was just saying, of articulating a broader norm or expectation, and then specifics underneath that, which kind of actually really theirs really correspond with what we've been talking about here, so down to some of the exact same actionable items. So I'm going to take this and take what we've talked about here and take these and revamp this based on what we've been discussing and send it all back to you. And I think what we can agree to is that because of the fact that we had a superintendent come in halfway through when we were sort of moving things around, that this process this time around is to figure out what the heck this process is, what these are, what we're looking for going forward. And so we're going to continue to do that process. And after I send that to you, if this format looks more like what we're talking about, then we'll proceed with that. And then we'll prioritize, and that's maybe probably the question I'll ask you, is prioritize the action steps underneath those categories. Does that sound
Yes.
good?
So how do we keep track of 9?
Yes.
I mean, that's like that, because of it and the complexity of it, harder for me to say, like, yes, let's prioritize, but like, we've got to figure out where to fit it in, when to fit it in, even if it doesn't ultimately go somewhere, like, we need to have the conversation and talk about it, because otherwise we'll just keep pushing it.
Agreed. So I think that it sort of falls under this idea of the board striving to advocate for equitable outcomes for all students, a sort of larger thing. And if we feel like that is if we agree that that's one of the things, then we can say that is our first priority in that area. There's lots of priorities that could happen in that area. And again, it's hard, it's not that any of these things are more important, but that this is something that we feel strongly about, then we have to figure out what we do next. And I think that, I don't know what we do next, but I think if we're talking about it, we can figure out what we're going to do next. And I think the working group that we suggested, talking with Amy, that might be the thing that she wants to do going forward next, because we're sort of pushing. That was one of the reasons why we stopped. We never really came back to that conversation, because hitting the ground running with the first 100 days was a lot. So what I guess the next thing would be to say, this is where we were before you came on. This is sort of what would you recommend going forward, and you don't have to come with an answer to that right this minute, but like having that be something that we ask you to continue to discuss and figure out the next steps. How does that sound? I'm getting nods and frowns. So what?
I think I feel a little uncomfortable having it like saying, this is how we understand this, is that it has to do with student equity or something. I'm like, well, that's one way of looking at it. Another way would be it's financially wise, for example. There's actually very different angles on this topic. That's part of the reason why it's complex. And I think that my concern about any process like this of goals and everything else, all very important, you can be at risk of just picking the things which you know what to do with them in a checklist. And you sort of, it's like, yes, we put this here and we attend these trainings and look, we checked it off the list. Whereas the things that are actually potentially transformative for a school district and a town never happen, because nobody knows how to start talking about them. And that's my concern. And so I don't feel like this, to me, is a topic unto itself that is incredibly important, incredibly complex. I think it would be a mistake to try to force it into, I guess I'm struggling. I clearly haven't understood the nature of the reluctance to have the discussion that I'm experiencing in various areas. I'm not putting this on one person.
No.
I'm not understanding it, because to me, the way that you make progress on a thorny issue is you sit down and you talk about it. You find the appropriate time and place to sit down and talk about it with the right people, and then you figure out what to do. And it might be that in that conversation you say, we can't tackle this. This isn't doable. But that's the place you have the conversation. And so it is fundamentally different to me than the other things on this list, and it's kind of a mistake to have it treated in the same way. It's not the same as a conversation about a communication plan, a conversation about the SRO. It's different, and so I want it to be addressed, but I don't want it to be shoehorned into something inappropriately.
So this board, and I hear what you're saying, the board operates as a whole body, right? So we have to decide as a whole body what we're going to, how we approach things. So, and I don't think that we've come up with a solution to any of that. I think we're still in this like, well, let's come up with ideas. I do want to add though, I mean, we have had several conversations about this in several different contexts. So it's not that we're not talking about it. It's not that we haven't. I mean, we had a long conversation with our pre-K administrators talking about the program. We had the city talk about their programs. We talked about sort of where we are right now. We've discussed that, which was really useful and helpful. And then I know we've had some conversations in finance and facilities about it. So it's not that we're not talking about it. It's just that we, as you point out, it's a complex issue, and I think we are still kind of figuring out I don't even know if we know what we don't know at this point, right? So I think that's part of it. And I think I agree, those conversations need to continue. I am at this point looking just for a structure to move forward, and if everyone agrees that they want to have this number 9, this goal, be its own separate goal, then that's fine, and we will do that. And so I'm going to give you a draft, and you all can edit it at will and make suggestions, and then we'll see where we are. I mean, everybody is going to have opinions on what they want to do next. So I think we have to give some framework, and it's a framework. It is not a set in stone. I haven't even made it yet. We don't even know what it is. And we can move it and change things as much as we want. I think we have to just make a step forward to do something, get something down, because this is not enough what we've got here, and we've got to move something else, and then we can make more changes. I'm not averse to changes. I think changes are good, and I think all of these issues, arguably everything on here or everything that we talk about at this table are complex issues. I mean, there are lots of ramifications of everything, and everything can be examined from 10 different angles. I think that's also true. So I just want us to get something so that we have something guiding us, and then you all can fix whatever it is that you want to do with it. How does that sound?
Go for it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move forward. I'll give a draft, and you can make whatever changes you want to it. All of them can be changed. It'll be a Google Doc, so just everyone will see.
So I agree that I would keep that one sort of as it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm planning on doing right now. Okay, excellent. Okay, sorry, gotta get back on my agenda here. Okay, moving on to new business. Back to policy. Discussion and action, first readings.
Okay. So is there any policy in this group of policies under new business that anyone would like to pull out to discuss separately?
MJ?
I guess, well, I think what we used to do was to kind of go through and then have a quick explanation and questions. I mean, I feel bad about pulling out the whole policy just because I have some questions that I want answered that were probably discussed
Do we have,
in
so
policy.
we don't have Tia's notes?
They're not included in there.
Are they not?
I didn't.
No,
I didn't see them, but
they're not there. That's helpful.
I'm sure you didn't.
So I think our policies hope, because we're going to have huge chunks of policies, so our hope is that the form that you'll get, the policy in the format that you'll get it, is sort of the modifications that have been made coming out of policy, paired with Tia's notes will help to, because she has pretty detailed notes that will indicate sort of what we talked about, what we modified, those kinds of things. I also have the versions of the New Hampshire, I'm gonna make a point to try to bring the, which I think I did, but I don't have in any like great order now that I've been flipping through them the entire meeting. The New Hampshire School Board versions of the policies, which have the notes from the New Hampshire School Board Association as to why they made changes to the policies or what are important aspects of the policy. But we don't have Tia's notes.
But we don't have that today, so I guess,
So,
I think
but she
we
has
wanna
it on
go-
her computer, so like if you have a specific question, then
Yeah, let's, I
And I
think we
have
can just
the
go
School
through
Board
the questions.
Association pulled up
perfect,
as
so
well, so
like.
we can tackle this.
So I think we can ask the questions, and if we determine, like we just did, that they are substantive questions or they can't be resolved, then we just move on and come
Right.
back to them, right? So.
right, I mean, yeah, because I thought the whole point of the first reading was kind of be able to ask the questions, and if they're quickly explained and there's no changes, then they move on to second reading, but.
Okay. So, so then we'll just hold off on the motion, the group motion. We'll just,
No,
no, or do you want to do
we'll
it?
just see what MJ,
Ask her questions?
Pull out all of them, huh?
Yeah. Right.
It looks like it's only 2 that I had questions on.
Excellent.
Not all of them, some are only 1 page, couldn't ask many questions.
All right. Which 2?
Okay, so we'll take the easiest of the questions. BBBF, which was student school board members.
Yeah.
Yes, so that whole thing is talking about, it's a high school student that is a board member. So I'm just wondering on E, oversight. It says the superintendent shall assure building principals coordinate with student council advisors. So seeing how we only have 1 high school, just wondering why that was a plural and just wasn't the building principal.
that one was probably, because the policy, the way that it's written, was for, like, you could have multiple high schools, so that might just be an editing.
Yeah.
See, I told you not all my questions were hard.
All right.
We also discussed maybe having an alternate, so a primary and an
Yeah,
alternate,
yeah.
right?
Well, it's not even discussed. That's BBB, is
Okay.
we have to have an alternate. So I asked them if they had elected an alternate, and Nora said no, and Ian said that generally the council moderator is the alternate. So if she can't come, they have defaulted to the council moderator as being the alternate.
And the big changes with these policies is that we want to move back to the model where the school board rep actually sits with us for the entire duration of the meeting and has input into the things that we're discussing, which is the way that it used to happen. And I think that that's the way that
The legislation.
the
reads.
legislation has changed it. So it wouldn't be that she would just give a report, that she would actually be a non-voting member of this board and have an opportunity to express on behalf of the school or the council.
Which even if we adopt this policy for this school year, my guess is that someone having that role wouldn't happen until next school year, because that's a huge time commitment, so that they didn't necessarily know that they were signing on for. But I agree, like, I would much rather have that model. But I think for whenever we adopt this, I think it won't go into effect really until next school year.
Or that,
They get somebody else, but I mean.
or no, that they're encouraged to do that when they have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
You want to make the change to a principal?
Yeah, so.
Building principal.
I didn't know if you were changing it from one.
We are changing it.
Well, I'd like to change it to 1, but that's up to everybody.
No, I think that,
You just want one principal or?
just one principal, because it's the high
But I
school.
forget.
We're Lebanizing it.
No, that's
The
good.
one school.
That's good.
Okay, so my other one was with JKAA, the use of restraints in seclusion.
So just to start, this is a new policy required by law, so this went into effect July 1. Our principals were all trained at this over the conference over the summer. And just to note, there talks about a form in here that we need to have, that the DOE needs to send us to report. The DOE is yet to publish that note, since their law that went into pass. So we are still waiting on that, but this is that policy that we were trained on.
Okay, so, a couple questions. Under definitions, section B, it talks about restraint, the definition of restraint. And it says, it is limited to actions taken by persons who are school or facility staff members, contractors, or otherwise under the control or direction of the school facility. But then when you actually go into, I guess it's the exceptions of the definition of restraint under letter V, or I guess it's 5 in the Roman numeral world. It talks about defend themselves or third person from what the actor really reasonably believes to be. So we don't ever define what actor is, and I guess I'm confused how we started moving on to using the word actor in this when it wasn't defined. And so I don't know if actor is really the school or facility staff members, contractors, or otherwise under the control, so if that should be called herein referred to as actors, or reading this as a layperson, I'm just confused who the actor is in this scenario.
The actor is the person doing the restraint.
Right, so I guess that's why I wonder if if we're gonna start using the term actor, if that should be kind of defined under the definition of restraint that.
Yeah, we can do that where we put the parentheses
Right.
and
Yeah,
put the
we can put
actor,
that
yeah.
in that.
And then anytime actor comes up, that'll be known to be that.
And then under 3, seclusion, means the involuntary confinement of a child, but then it says the term seclusion does not, however, include the voluntary separation of a child from a so I guess I don't understand what a voluntary separation is, especially at the elementary school level, because I can't imagine a elementary school kid volunteering to be separated if they're acting out.
I think sometimes kids do, though.
Yeah.
They'll ask to tap out or
Go to the Zen den or a safe space.
I think it's even sometimes part of 504s, isn't it,
Yeah.
that they like
Yeah,
have
so that's
access
part
to
of that.
spaces where they can go and be,
and they can ask for that.
yeah, I think that's right.
But I think what they're trying to say here is that when a child goes outside of a classroom, just because they're outside of a classroom, that doesn't constitute seclusion.
But it's the child has to, right, the child has to ask to leave, because the child has to be the one volunteering to leave, right? Otherwise, it's not a voluntary separation.
I mean, you can ask the child if they want to go someplace quiet, they can say
Right.
yes. It's a voluntary separation. They're not being forced.
And if they don't choose to leave, they don't choose to leave, and they don't.
Right, well,
they're not
that's
forcing.
involuntary at that
Right, I mean,
point,
they're not
right.
forcing anyone to leave. That's what they're just clarifying. That that's not seclusion if they do leave. And even if they
Because
leave and go
there's-
to another
there's
place.
such specific requirements for seclusion. I think what they're saying is that type of action where a child is asking for that does not fall under
It's
this
not
policy.
unlawful, right, because RSA with the seclusion, right?
Because
So
there's
it's-
all these reportable things that happen if true seclusion happens, is my understanding of.
Right, yeah, true seclusion is not supposed to be happening, correct, with the new RSA? There needs to be a staff member present, particularly if it's involuntary. You can't just lock a kid in a room
And
leave
wait.
them there till they calm down.
Right.
Not in New
Even-
Hampshire at least.
Yeah. Can't look out, like, even have a window just to make, can't do that anymore.
Right.
Okay, and then under K, it's just, the dissemination of policy is repeated twice, so, that part needs to be taken out, because it's addressed under L.
I got it. Where's
The last page.
Very last page. I got it. It's all taken out.
What is it?
So under K, dissemination of policy is actually L, so it's repeated twice, so you just need to take it out of K because it's already on L. In the middle of K, it says the bold, that whole thing is just repeated under L. Exactly, word for word, it's just. And I just have one more question about that policy, or not a question, but a comment. And this goes back to page 3, training required, C, letter C. So just so that we're clear, this policy, which is new, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Updated, right?
Is it
Yeah,
updated?
it was a
or-
revised review requirement.
Okay, so this policy that says, under C3 on page 3, all employees, designated volunteers, and other persons who are required to have criminal history background checks under the other policy receive general training in the requirements and prohibitions of this policy, as well as basic de-escalation procedures. So currently, we do not do that for designated volunteers. So that would be a change in our current process, and we would just need to specify that because there's lots of people like me, for instance, who are designated volunteers, but that's not something that we've heretofore gotten training in. We get anti-bullying training as a designated volunteer, but there's no de-escalation training or general training in seclusion policy, so that would just need something we need to update for our designated volunteers.
Does
They just know that general training does not allow them to
Yes, yes,
restrain.
right. That's, training basically is don't do this.
Right.
Right. Here's what it is,
But it's
don't
good.
do
It's
it.
like if you see a
Yeah.
kid, don't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's all of my questions, actually. Yeah, those were all of my questions. Do you have any others?
Okay, so
No?
we're back
Okay,
to
we're
our
good.
motion.
We're back to the motion.
So I move that the policies under 10, new business, policies A through F are moved to a second reading at our next, but not Saturday.
At our next meeting, our next full board meeting that is not a budget meeting. I need a second.
You said A through F.
Yeah, because G's the withdrawal thing.
Got it.
Yes, G is withdrawn. Okay, A through F, can I get a second? Oh, okay, Tia, let's go, Tia second. Okay, and any other discussion? Okay, Lisa has left the building, Lisa's left the Zoom, so we can just do a regular vote. So all those in favor of moving them to a second reading? Okay, unanimous, thank you.
So, we don't really need to do anything with ILDA until we pass the ILD and then we withdraw that one.
Right.
So
Okay.
we're going to hold off on that one.
Perfect. Okay, great. That brings us to HB 437, what we added to the agenda.
Right, so HB 437 is relative to a reading assessment and intervention program. So this bill creates assessment program in the Department of Education, requires assessments in kindergarten through grade 3 for students with reading deficiencies, and establishments a reading improvement grant replacing the portion of adequate education grant based on non-proficient pupil reading. So it does have financial implications. There is an education committee meeting on Monday, and I spoke with Leah and did not know if that's something that you wish me to attend to speak. It's the 13th, isn't it? Education committee at the state.
Oh, right, sorry. Like, what are we talking about? Go ahead, keep going.
And to see if we would like to support this. So I am in clear with the language to what that impact would be if they take it out of the adequate education grant. So I'm not sure, have you seen this legislation piece too? This just came through today at 3 o'clock to see if people wanted to go down to speak. So I didn't know your thoughts and to see if that's something that you would like to, or we would like to wait to see if we get more information on it. Relating back to the education committee, we know this is coming down the pipe of needing an evidence-based reading program. Our education committee is moving towards this anyways. We are doing the screener for reading, so a lot of this stuff we're going to be in compliance with in Lebanon when this passes.
We talked a little bit about this in our AC meeting. So just a couple of areas of concern, which is why I would say I don't know if we want to wholly support this, because the one area of concern is that the bill as it's currently written, and again, I don't know what version they're looking at, but the bill as it's currently written says that the Department of Education will pick a screener and that all schools will use the same screener. And we just have a little concern about that because heretofore their selections for things have not been awesome, and so that seems a little problematic. The second thing that is a little concerning is that at the very end of the current version, it says that starting in January 2028, that all the following educators would have to pass a new subject assessment test, so like have the praxis again. All educators would need to do this again, and this includes elementary education teachers, early childhood education teachers, English, ELA teachers for grades 5 through 8, ELA teachers for grades 5 through 12, special education teachers, early childhood special education teachers, reading and writing teachers, and reading and writing specialists, which is a very broad category of people that would be required to retake the praxis, which is this point is not required for anyone ever. So I feel like it's very broad reach. So I just would be concerned about
New teachers have to do reading.
Right.
Yep, brand new teachers, and back in probably in the 90s, 2000, if you had a master's, you didn't have to take the praxis, so this would be asking anybody that was certified from.
which is, that's a heavy
70
lift.
degrees, yeah.
So I just would want to express, I think that the focus of this is really good because I think definitely we want to be screening, we want to have a science of reading based reading program, which is what the curriculum committee is trying to do. All of that thing is great. I think those particular pieces are just a little.
Do we want to weigh in on those pieces?
Well, that's
or?
what I was gonna say. Is it worthwhile to make a statement of support? And these are
Concern.
also our thoughts of how we
Concern.
would like to
Yeah.
see it improved.
And I
That
think-
could be really powerful
I think
for a school board to.
Karen Dubois might be the person to talk to.
To go. Yeah, maybe she's a reading
Yes.
specialist. So,
Right.
Yeah.
She might be the better.
Yep.
So anyway, that's just but otherwise, I think this is a move in the right direction. And I think it's going to happen regardless. It's just what does it look like when it happens?
Yeah.
So it could be helpful to provide our input in committee. So.
So my question is this guided towards teachers that work in the public school, or what about private schools?
Just the public school.
Yeah.
And not charter.
Not
And
cover you.
so
You don't
pri-
So that is another area of concern.
Right.
That's a big area of concern for me.
Not private or
Because
charter.
they're not assessing any of the teachers in these schools that don't even have degrees or have the training, and I just, I wouldn't vote for it. I wouldn't go with it at all. But we're getting too far away from where we should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. That's another sort of point of we support the theory of science of reading. Yes, we support the science of reading. We support teaching
Right.
phonics. We support phonemic awareness. All of those things
Exactly.
And we're moving towards that.
in the district already.
Yep.
But yes, I think we also, if it's going to be a law, we also support it applying to private and charter schools as well.
Okay, so adding that, right? And how sticky is that with private and charter not needing to be certified? Do we want to maybe, right, legislative committee, right? Maybe having that as one of the things to advocating for certification. They're not gonna do that, I guess, for private and charter, but I
But we
mean,
can
it
bring
is
it- I think we should
a
bring it up.
topic.
I
Yeah,
think it
is
should
a
be brought
topic.
up, though.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
bring it up and see what they say.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you for the
if you
guidance.
if you want to coordinate with Amy and Karen, I think that then
Yep.
we can decide who goes on what form. That'd be great. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, committee updates. Finance and facilities. Next meeting is Thursday, November 16th at 4:15. Do you have something to?
Yes, well, I just would like, from our city task force meeting, what sort of came out of that, I just want to make sure on our finance and facilities agenda that we have discussion, follow-up discussion regarding how we can coordinate, so how we need to update our CIP, and then how we can coordinate sharing that information with the city, and sort of what kind of time frame we need to be on in order to communicate with them for their budget process kind of thing.
Okay.
Like, so the more detailed, what came out of it essentially is the more detailed information that we can provide, and the better we can think about long-term, potentially bonded projects in addition to our regular maintenance, the better we can get at that with year 1 through 6 kind of thing, the more useful that information becomes to them and how they're thinking about their projects and budget and things like that, so.
Okay.
So they saying they would then delay some of their projects if they knew one of ours was up?
They
Is that
said
kind of
they
where
could
we're going with
potentially-
this?
They said that they could potentially do that, and they have ways to add that project back in if ours gets, if ours doesn't get approved, if we're trying to bond something, so.
Okay.
But that requires us to have a better CIP,
Okay. So that's the message for F and F.
if we can add that to our agenda, those
Well,
initiatives.
then, yeah, I mean, we can put it on there. Nothing will probably, I mean, we got a little heavy lift, seeing that we don't have a facilities director at the moment to help with some of that stuff, but it can definitely go on the agenda for a topic for discussion.
I think the Finance and Facilities Committee needs to come to some agreement around what we want to have for a document that guides.
Okay, great. Policy Committee, we've heard all of your wonderful things. You met October 30th. Do you have anything additional to share with us about that?
We just, we're changing up our agenda a bit, so we're trying to make sure that we track things well, and our list keeps getting longer.
Good job. We appreciate it. And your next meeting is Monday, November 20th. Education Committee met.
I sent my notes to Lori, but they didn't get put in. So I'm sorry about that, but I sent them yesterday.
I got them. Do you want me to give the update too?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, we discussed the final draft of the enrichment statement for the SAU 88. We also discussed the K through 5 ELA resource committee. We need to address the current ELA to be in compliance with RSA with the science of reading. So there is a resource committee to review the resources that we have, look at the available grant funds that we currently have and how we can update that, stay in compliance, and meet the needs of our students.
Great. And the next meeting is Monday, December 4th at 4 p.m. PNN, next meeting is to be determined. Student Wellness Advisory Committee, their next meeting is Wednesday, January 3rd. HACTC, their next meeting is Tuesday, November 14th. The Area Committee, next meeting is Tuesday, February 27th. And the School District City Task Force, next meeting is...
I think it's in January.
No, that's not it. January?
The Education Committee meets on the 11th of December.
11th of
It got
December.
And wait, and let's talk about policy, I think got changed too.
It did, sorry, I'm out of town.
That's okay.
Policy's not on Monday the 20th?
Let me see.
I think it is.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it is.
Oh,
It's
We
on the
changed the
20th.
week.
Okay.
To the 20th.
Yes, okay.
I was like, oh boy.
And the City District Task Force is January, do we know January which? I mean, it's a long time between now and January, but just,
But I think he just recently sent something.
The next task force meeting is in January.
we don't know the date yet, but it's January.
The education committee moved to November 11th.
December 11th.
January 25th.
Oh, January 25th. And December 11th, yes.
Thank you, December 11th.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, great, thank you for that. All right, future agenda items or board member questions. We have one thing about dates. On our calendar currently,
I said a future item. Is that-
Okay.
First, at the city task force, city manager Mulholland mentioned about the TIF project, and potential changes in kind of a funding strategy for us, for those TIF districts, that we could bill the districts separately. I think it would benefit for us to have him come speak to the group and let us know what they were thinking about that. So I would like to invite him to our December 13th meeting, and have him speak about the TIF.
That would be great. As far as meetings go, on our calendar, you will notice that we have, right now on the calendar is a meeting scheduled for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We can not have that meeting if a majority of the board agrees that we do not need to have that meeting. Any thoughts?
Oh, that's right.
I vote not to have it.
Okay, but can you make a motion to that effect?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to cancel the November 20th, 2023 board meeting.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, of course. Steve seconds, motion by MJ. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, so our next meeting then is, our annual budget meeting is on Saturday, November 18th at 8 a.m. here. The following December 13th is our next school board meeting at 6:30 here. And looking far ahead, the deliberative session is Saturday, February 3rd at 9 a.m. also here. Are there any other future agenda items or board member questions or recommendations?
I think I just said the motion was for November 20th, but that date's actually November 22nd.
Sorry. November 22nd meeting. We made a motion, we all canceled it, it's fine. All right.
And does that mean that in December, we meet on the 13th and the 27th, and that's?
I think we don't meet on the 27th.
We often don't meet on the 27th either.
Oh, okay.
Because it's
So,
school vacation.
but the 13th is, we'll vote on that on the 13th, but
So
that's
some of it will depend on
how
our
the budget is done.
discussions go, because we
Yeah.
have to have a budget approved by,
The job date is basically a week before the deliberative session, but you need to have a public hearing. I don't have the exact date, but the middle of January.
Okay.
So you need to have a budget that's pretty much firm by probably that first meeting in January.
Okay.
so that's the only time we might.
Got it. So if we have,
If there's a
the
lot of,
bomb explodes, then that's
Right.
when we would mop up.
right.
Got it.
Or,
You can do another meeting, usually the
different
second
day.
board meeting in January is still in time for the deliberative session, but I gotta check the calendar from the DRA.
thank you. Anything else? No.
Is there usually a time frame of how long the budget meeting lasts? I work on Saturdays,
So-
so do I need to cancel my whole day?
Yes.
I would usually, they've often been done by noon, but I don't think that's gonna happen this year.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would go long. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
cancel my
So
day.
last year it was till 2, I think, last year. So
It depends, like,
it really
so
depends.
sometimes we're completely, so each group will give their presentation, and then it depends on how, like, if we're just completely wiped out, or if there's going to be lots of discussion, and we don't think we're really going to get through that in a meaningful way in the time left, then sometimes we just leave it and come back.
And I will not be effective at my job at that point, so.
Exactly.
Right.
Last year, we just at 2 o'clock, we're like,
Yeah.
We're sort of fried.
Yeah,
That's-
Right.
Does
And we-
somebody bring snacks?
There should be food
Yes.
Yeah, at the beginning.
Okay.
There will be snacks.
I'm gonna make some cheesecake.
Yeah, right, right. Anything else? No? Steve?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Mary actually is faster. Mary's gonna second. All those in favor? Aye, all right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.